What is going on, everybody? We are live. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Lineman Life podcast. I have my very good friend here, Ryan Moody 21 from the Ryan Moody 21 YouTube channel, the king of Madden breakdowns. How you doing today, good sir?
I've never been better, man. We're going to sit here talk about some second-rate football.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Today we are going to be talking about the XFL debut weekend.
Yeah, somehow I lost sound. Can you hear me? I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. And this is how you know we're live.
Check, check. Can you hear me? All right.
You were doing so good, too. You had your phone on mute, you had everything in line, and then that.
Look, man, this damn computer decides my computer's been acting on the fritz last few days here, and the mic was on the fritz today. Finally got that thing going, but let's get back to it. For those of you who don't remember, the XFL's first iteration came in 2001 when Vince McMahon promoted the league as a more extreme version of football without the wussy rules. And it was promoted to be something that was going to be a direct competitor and a much more, I guess, primal version of the NFL. But as we all found out, for those of us who remember, that was all a farce, as the league was half rate at best. And we witnessed a number of unnecessary injuries due to ridiculous rules, ridiculous WWF, at the time it was WWF style presentation, and storylines that just did not really fit with the overall mold of the NFL, of football itself. And at the end of the day, it was really a subpar product that was overhyped and actually came out to good fanfare, good ratings. But when you don't have a good product on the field, it doesn't really matter what else you try to produce or what else you try to present the game as. It just did not have the kind of weight to hold up against any kind of real legitimate football, and thus it failed after its first season. Now, since then, we have had another football league come onto the scene in the AAF. That league itself announced that they were going to be starting their football operations around the same time that the XFL did, but they took a different approach and decided to rush out a product that was also somewhat half rate and not able to hold itself up under its own weight. They financially went bust before they even got three quarters of the way through the season, and filed bankruptcy and went defunct as quickly as they came onto the scene. I personally think that the XFL has done a wonderful job in taking their time to get this product off the ground. To launch this product, it took 2 years of gathering teams together, of research, logistics, everything that they needed to get done in order to make sure that they could give themselves the best opportunity possible to have a successful product. And on Saturday, the kickoff started with the DC Defenders playing against the Seattle Dragons. And to many people's surprise and many people's pleasure, it was legitimate football being played, exciting football being played, football that fans have almost immediately bought into. And I think the ratings are also supporting that fact. But the XFL has actually relaunched itself, rebranded itself, and is right now, as far as we can tell, a product that looks to be able to garner some momentum and keep itself going throughout the course of at least this first season. And in my estimation, I look at it as a league that could possibly become a true feeder system to the NFL for players who come out of college early and aren't necessarily considered first-round picks, and for players who are journeymen in the NFL looking to hone their skills and find some steady income as a professional athlete. So what do you think about how the league started off its kickoff weekend in the XFL, Ryan?
Well, you forgot all about the UFL there, and then you glossed over the fact the Arena Football League closed. But yeah, for the most part, I would say it's a very good position. The Spring League obviously thrown in there too, but they're in a very good position. And you said a lot of things there that they did right. They took the criticisms from before. They dialed back the gimmick ball, if you will. Not that I didn't love the fight for the scramble for the football to determine who got the kickoff, but a little bit less out of the box in how they presented the game. They didn't try to compete with the NFL, which we all know in our hearts and on our TVs will never happen. They simply expressed themselves as an option of us watching football. They did a very good job with it. I will say one thing. The kickoffs that they have should be automatically adopted by the NFL. That is the smartest kickoff system ever. I love the transparency. It's almost like they listened to all the complaints we had about the NFL, and they were like, all right, we're going to do all this stuff. Make the kickoffs safer and more exciting. Make the half times less. Make the game faster. Be more transparent with the rules. Actually show us what's going on with the replay, even if it is a guy with an Xbox controller. Those are all the things we wanted, and they gave it to us. I mean, the coaches actually giving the play live. It didn't register with me until you saw it, and you're like hearing the double reverse get called, and then you're watching it execute. And it's like, yeah, no, I expect that from a professional sports league. And, like I said, I don't think they're ever going to be in a position to compete, and they know that. They've accepted that. But entertaining football, journeyman players, and maybe some guys that were just not good enough to make it to the NFL level, but can really excel here and, perhaps give us quality football when quality football is not here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And, I think you elaborated on one thing that was really excellent was the kickoff. Some of the innovations that the XFL has made in the changes that they've brought to the rules of football are actually rule changes that I believe move the sport forward. The kickoff is a prime example of that. You have your kickoff coverage team at the 35-yard line, the plus 35, which would be on the other side of the field. On the receiving team side of the field at the 35-yard line, you have the kickoff return team lined up at the 30-yard line, their own 30, and nobody moves until the kick is received or has been on the ground for 3 seconds by the kickoff returner. Now, one thing that I foresee coming along with how they're doing this kickoff, the way that they've now changed the kickoff and evolved it, is that you can actually start implementing different styles of blocking schemes. Now, there are blocking schemes on the run in the traditional kickoff return setup, but with this new setup that they have, I mean, you can start pulling guys from the right side of the field to the left side of the field. You can pull guys from the middle to the sidelines, try and create more lanes for the returner to run through with actual tactics that are more closely tied to the run game itself that you would usually see within the offense. And I think that really just adds another element to the kick game, or another element to the excitement of the kick game that you just don't see in the NFL. The NFL has tried to basically nullify and make obsolete the kickoff game, or the kickoff play. What used to be, a beautiful train wreck in the NFL is now just a monotonous play that's just a going through the motions kind of play. I think that what the XFL has done is brought this back to a more exciting level. I think it's something that people definitely, that the NFL should definitely, like you said, adopt this into their league. But also another part of the game that I think that they've changed that is really, really does move the game forward is the extra point. the extra point options in the XFL, although they didn't use them in a way that I thought they would. I thought when you have these options after a touchdown, instead of taking the extra point kick, you get an option to run a 2-point conversion or a 1-point conversion play from the 2-yard line, a 2-point conversion play from the 5-yard line, and a 3-point conversion play from the 10-yard line. As somebody who, played the game, I look at the situation like that and I say, that's pretty awesome, right? If I were a coach, I would be going for 3 points every single time for a couple of reasons. One, you're at the 10-yard line, gives you the ability to open up your playbook a little bit more, gives you the ability to stretch the field a little bit. You can put out 3-4 wide receivers out there and still have the ability to drop back and get a decent route to throw the ball into the end zone. So you're really working with about 20 yards of space. And instead of it allows you to be more creative. You can use reverses, you can use screens, things of that nature. I saw a lot of teams just going for 1 point, which really struck me as odd because that is the least even though you look at the statistics from the NFL and it says 50% success rate for a 2-point conversion from the 2-yard line. In the XFL, you have a 2 and a 3-point option, and everybody knows, even though you're at the 2-yard line, 2 yards is probably harder to gain than 10 in that part of the field. So if you back it up to the 10-yard line, you give the offense much more in way of being able to be creative and being able to get a decent pass, keeping those defenses out of those zero coverages, keeping them from bringing those all-out blitzes, and you're able to get a better playoff. And I saw a lot of teams going for the 1-point play, and that didn't make sense to me. I think that was more of a playing to the percentages based on what the NFL does. But if this is a different style and a different kind of league, in the sense that they're giving you more options, I think that you have to take advantage of that. You have to go for 3 points more times than not. And I think that you'll actually see a success rate that's better than 50% when you're going for a 3-point play from the 10-yard line instead of going for a 1-point play from the 2-yard line. I feel like that play actually is a worthless play to make from the 2-yard line. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think there's growing pains. I think, you have coaches. Yeah, I think coaches are just going to be more comfortable with what they know. I was really shocked, too, because if you think about it, I mean, you've only got to get it 1 to 3 times, right? Like, you're going to have 3 shots to get those 3 points where you would have got field goals anyway. So what does it matter? I mean, give it a shot. Like you said, you've got more field to work with. Give me a fast tight end, give me a tall receiver, and let's see what happens. I will say that, apart from that, one of the other things that really impressed me was they weren't shy about integrating NFL players into their broadcast. Pat McAfee, Greg Olsen, Troy Aikman, like these are faces we know, or we knew in Troy's case. We needed some familiarity. I needed somebody like, oh, okay, that person signed off. Oliver Luck wasn't enough for me. But when you look at the people that were put into this league specifically for the fans' sake, I think that was another huge step and they were making and saying, listen, we're not trying to sell you something totally different. We're trying to sell you the same product you love, just repackaged under a different kind of mask, if you will. And that was really, like I said, I think when I looked at the weekend, not really knowing what to expect or what the fan turnout was going to be or what the response was going to be, because in the past, any league that's came in, there's been a ton of resistance where people have just basically said, if it's not the highest level, I'm not going to watch. I'm not interested. It's B league. Right, but to me, when you look at what they did, as you said, a big part of it taking all the time,
there,
going and getting the no, your internet's all screwy. Or I think you're behind me, believe it or not. It's you.
Hey, I think we lost you. We lost your audio.
I love how you tried to fix
audio there. Let's see. Maybe try and get a reconnect.
Did we say this was live?
Or jump back into it.
Now you're reconnecting to me. We did mention this was live.
A little bit of technical difficulties there. I'm not sure if you can hear me, Ryan, but we lost you on the audio. Check the private chat.
I lost you on the video.
We're gonna get Ryan to reconnect. We lost him on the audio there, but just to kind of piggyback what he was saying, with everything that they're doing with the league, I think that, like you said, there has to be a little bit of familiarity with what we have in the NFL. And seeing guys like Pat McAfee, seeing Troy Aikman out there, seeing guys like that kind of bring that little bit of familiarity to it, letting you know that it's still football. And at the end of the day, you really have a situation where these are players who are playing more for, you know, that resume of trying to get themselves in a position to be called up to the NFL, while still having, you know, that's still kind of, let's see, he's back. Hey.
I'm here.
Okay, you're good now. I don't know what happened. That was kind of weird. But yeah, I was just kind of
blame your internet.
Don't blame my internet. My internet is blazing fast. But no, just just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, you know, that familiarity is important. But also the fact that what I liked is that there was guys like Steve Levy, who was announcing, and his voice is instantly recognizable to the football crowd, to the sports crowd, because of his experience with ESPN. But also, I just felt like the fan bases are already kind of building themselves up. Like I said, that DC Defenders game to me was the best game of the weekend. That game had, you know, it had the most consistency in terms of clean play. Obviously, you had you know, star players like what's his name from Cardell Jones, who was with Ohio State.
Cardell Jones.
He had a great game, threw some great passes, looked sharp.
Unbelievable.
Their defense looked sharp. I thought DC
quarterback.
Defenders defense looked better than every defense of the weekend. They had some big plays that they made out there. But I also felt like you know, the St. Louis Battlehawks had a great game against the Dallas Renegades, who were supposed to be the favorites of this league to start the season. Once again, we have another Dallas team that is predicted to win in football that just underperforms on a consistent basis. And I thought we saw a lot of that from them in their game. But tell me a little bit about what you liked in terms of the on-field play.
Well, you know, I'd feel a lot better if there was a Jacksonville team that was maybe considering going to another country. I mean, if we're going to talk about familiarity with teams, right? How would that be?
Yeah, I can't hear you again. I don't know what's going on with our sound there.
It is your internet, I promise you.
Maybe that's just
in the
me.
live chat. Who can hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, but maybe the can you guys hear him in the chat? Can you guys hear Ryan? So I'm not hearing him.
I don't have a response since 8:21. I don't know if it.
Okay, we got. I think
I am heard.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Ryan can hear me, or maybe he can hear himself.
That's just on my end. Keep going. I'll check my my stuff right now. Go ahead.
Well, as I was saying, I think, as you mentioned, one of the other things they did as far as getting out there with the best product is they put the best team up first. I mean, if they had put one of the worst teams out, then it was going to look bad. But to me, going and getting the Defenders, having a coach like Pep Hamilton, having a quarterback that was a little bit unheralded but recognized, I think that was probably their best option. Anything less, if you lead with a poor product, they're in trouble. And they chose not to do that. So I believe you're still trying to connect. I will continue on. I will also say the timing for this league from a social media standpoint was where it needed to be. Okay, you've got Twitter integration, you've got live streaming, you've got tons of people covering this. You know, those are things that in 2001 just weren't there. So the fact that you have a lot more people that can talk about this socially, I think helps put the league in a better perspective. When you lead with a more quality product, then you're generating a more positive impression with people that may or may not watch it. And now all of a sudden, the person that just is a regular football fan sees this, hears this on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever, and now all of a sudden he's inclined to tune in. Before with the XFL 2001, we weren't there yet. So they've done a really good job of trying to tie everything all together, be proud of their product. And if you look at it actually from an investing standpoint, WWF could not be in a worse place right now. I mean, if you look at their market value, where it has been versus today, they're in a tough spot where things really shouldn't be working for them. And it's refreshing to see that it is. Are you back, Uchi? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Well, then when you were talking about Dallas and how familiar you were with Dallas coming up short, I offered that it would be comfortable for me as an NFL fan if there was a team in Jacksonville that was looking to move internationally. And that would really make it more resonate with me if you had like the Jacksonville team trying to go to like Paris or something, right? I mean, if you're going to go there, I'm just saying. That was a beautiful touchdown run there.
Yeah, I don't think Jacksonville can hold an XFL team right now. They're holding on for dear life just to keep the Jaguars out there. So.
Oh, you know what? That's a great talking point. Do you think the DC Defenders could beat the Cleveland Browns right now?
No, there's not a team in the XFL that could beat a single team in the NFL.
Are you really going to go there with that? That's not fair. That's so not fair.
It's the truth. It is
That's
the
not
truth.
fair. No, it's not.
It's the truth.
I bet you the Defenders would impress the Browns.
No, I don't. No.
Do you think there's a chance Tom Brady is doing all this retirement talk to go to the XFL?
If Tom Brady went to the XFL, that league would explode. He would win. He would just continue to win champ. No. He still needs good receivers. He doesn't have them. That's probably one of the weakest parts that I've seen of the XFL. If I had to pick out a weak part, it would be the receiving cores for most of the teams. Not all of them. But for the most part, that is probably the only part of the game that really looked like it was a little bit sloppy for the opening weekend. But again, like I've been telling people, it's only the first week. In the NFL, you see a lot of these same things, maybe not on the same level, maybe not on the same. Oh, we got some people in here. Maybe not on the same at the same rate. But as the weeks move on, as you get into week 3, week 4, you're going to see a substantial improvement in the polish of the players and the polish of the skills. But right now, we actually have another one of our Sports Wars contributors here, my guy, Ryan Kennel from RK Outpost. Welcome to the stream. I believe this will be the first time you've been in here with my man, Ryan Moody from the Ryan Moody YouTube channel. So welcome on in, man.
That's true. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Ryan. There was a little problem. We couldn't hear Ryan's or something. Uche, he rang the alarm, said we need another Ryan in here immediately. So I came running. But nice to be on, Uche, and nice to meet you, Ryan.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Always nice to meet another Ryan. And this should certainly make the conversation weird going forward as we respond to the same things.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, man, this XFL thing was it was a breath of fresh air, to be honest. I didn't think that it was going to be like this. I didn't think that the production value of the on-screen product was going to be as good as it was. And it felt legitimately like you were watching NFL production. And then you had all this other stuff with the interviews on the sidelines, the mic'd up referees, the mic'd up play calls. It was such a great experience watching. I kind of can't wait till next week.
Yeah, no, I agree, dude. I felt like there was some elements of the game that you didn't find, that you don't find in the NFL. And it was refreshing to kind of get that feel, get that take. And also at the same time, I was really impressed with the way that the crowds showed up for these games. The crowds showed up. And, I keep saying it, but the DC Defenders game, I mean, it was an exciting game to watch. I was genuinely excited with how the games were competing against how the teams were competing against each other. I was genuinely excited about how, the fans were reacting and how the players reacted with the sideline interviews. These are things that you usually only see in like the Pro Bowl or in some preseason football in the NFL with star players. But these were guys. These interviews were being done with players who were important to the moment, and I think it was done well. And I also think the transparency with the officiating was crucial. I think that's something that you'll also see the NFL try to emulate as well, in that you have referees who you can hear the conversations when they're huddled up. You can hear their conversations with the replay booths. And even though, they were using the Xbox controller to go through the replays, that's probably the easiest way to do it rather than coming up with some kind of customized replay control system. Just hook up an Xbox controller and get to checking out the replays. But that transparency by itself, for me, really did add a huge element to the game that you just don't find with the NFL, and that is something that is a marketing point in bringing this league along and helping it mature and helping it stick around for the long run.
Yeah, better that than the magic 8-ball, I believe, that the NFL uses to figure out how they're going to go through the replays. We don't want to see that. My signs point towards yes, first down. I did read today that Pepper Johnson got released, so clearly they are not going to put with poor performances. Pepper Johnson, pretty well-known name, at least from you look at other coaching staffs. I don't know how many people really know a majority of the coordinators outside of him. Also, I mean, I'm just saying, Phillip Rivers looks like he's moving on too. Could be making that big swing toward the XFL. Don't knock it till he hasn't said it.
You know what's funny is that it actually kind of makes sense for somebody like, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen by any stretch, but it actually makes sense for guys like Phillip Rivers, guys like, let's say Jameis Winston, guys like, I wouldn't say Drew Brees necessarily, but these free agent quarterbacks who are going to be looking to get with new teams this year, in a way to keep themselves kind of on top of their game heading into the into OTAs and training camp. Maybe come in and work with a few of these teams. Maybe not playing a game, obviously, but maybe come in and work with a few of these teams in their practices. Come in and kind of give them their quarterback pointers, and of course they'd get paid for it. But have them come in and kind of play that, coach player role for a few weeks while they're getting ready to, go into their offseason training activities. I think that that's just something that kind of is would naturally flow together well for the teams, for these players, and helping to even in that helps to build the skill level of players in the XFL.
I think that, like what you said the last half, kind of with them coming into a practice doing something like that, I could see that. I couldn't see any of these guys, like these veterans who want to play for a competitor next year and take a snap with the XFL. I can't imagine a 38-year-old Phillip Rivers, a 40-year-old Drew Brees out there to try to stay sharp on the field with shit offensive linemen against people who are trying to get their big break in the NFL, who are fighting hard as hell to get past and sack Drew Brees. I just can't see it happening. That'd be too dangerous.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think it's an interesting talking point for a quarterback competition. If somebody were to go step down and put on a decent performance here, or let me just say it, where else is Antonio Brown going to show himself? There's a bunch of different places where you could start theoretically. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of position battles start with the fans. They start with fans that are upset. They start with fans going on social media. I don't want this player. I want, whatever the case may be. What great way to jumpstart that conversation in that city by having a quarterback go out and put on that performance. And you know what? Sure, to the coaches and to most people in the know, they're going to look at this and say, yeah, it was against the XFL defense, not NFL caliber. But at the same time, showing that commitment to, listen, this is what I'm going to be willing to do to go out and try to become better. I think there's some validity until it happens. When it happens, we'll all look back and be like, oh, yeah, well, of course that was going to happen at some point. We just don't know when it's going to happen. But, yeah, I think Antonio Brown, if he wants to come back and, if you're willing to come down to this league and play for an Arby's gift card, what do you think they get for a game here? There's no doubt that it would show a commitment to trying to go back on the right path. Colin Kaepernick will not lower himself to this standard, though, Zach. There's no way. Let's stop that right now. There's no way that he would do that. But there are some players probably just desperate enough to be like, you know what, I could blow up my knee in the mall. Let me go see if I can, fire a couple darts here in the XFL.
Yeah, Kaepernick doesn't even want to play in the NFL. Let's be honest. He doesn't. He's had his actual opportunities. He really wanted to showcase himself, but he wants the attention. And to be honest, it's probably more profitable for him that way anyway. And but yeah, definitely guys like Des Bryant, who basically nobody even wants to give a look at right now. I could see somebody like that.
Talent.
Yeah. And like you said, Uche, there's definitely some skill position players that are lacking right now. I saw a lot of drops, a lot of easy drops from the wide receivers, but I could also see at the same time, these skill players being the ones that actually get the ones that actually get a flyer from people in the NFL, whether it be a running back, whether it be a wide receiver that you're going to bring on and have your 5th or 6th wide receiver on your team. People like that. I can see the guys that I feel like will struggle getting a break in the NFL will be guys that are playing in the lines like you, offensive linemen, the big defensive linemen to an extent, because it's like, well, you're not playing really against anybody. It's hard to showcase. You can showcase open field speed and maneuverability and hands. You can showcase that. Other stuff, not so much.
Yeah, and and I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing some people talking about T.O., but I look at this situation and I think that, for, like you said, skill positions, a guy like T.O., obviously, he's probably too old to really get out there and play in this league and it feel like it's worth his while. But you'll see some maybe bubble guys who will go and try their hand in the XFL to try and at least hone their skills going into training camp for the NFL, because there will be players who will be with the XFL even right now who will be gone by the time March and April comes around, because they're going to get picked up by an NFL team based on what they've done in the XFL. Now, as far as the lines I think are at a little bit of a disadvantage simply because of the play clock situation. I think the play clock situation is the only part of the rule changes that I've seen that I really don't agree with. Reason being is that a 40-second play clock is essential not just for the organization of the offense or the defense, but also for recovery between each play. You saw a lineman getting tired quick yesterday. You saw defensive linemen and offensive linemen gassing. You saw one move and done by a lot of defensive linemen. I saw plenty of times when offensive linemen were late off the snap because they were a little bit winded. You're late on the snap when you're still trying to catch your breath. And I think that does slow down or does hurt their ability to consistently perform at a high pace. The 40-second play clock is partially set that way to allow for recovery for each play so that you can get the fastest, most high energy play that you can out of a player after each given play. And for me, of course, it would hurt the lines the worst when you only get 25 seconds. I even saw receivers with their hands on their waists, getting lined up late. In the NFL, there were a few times that I saw that in the NFL, if receivers had lined up and actually got set as late as they did, it would have been an illegal formation or an illegal or an offsides, I think, based on how late they got set up because they were actually winded. I thought it was a good idea, but in actual execution, 25 seconds is too fast to be running the play clock for any offense. You're literally consistently in 2-minute drill, which is hell. 2-minute drill is the most exhausting part of a game. So to constantly be in that kind of mode throughout the course of a game, that's rough.
What about players that are coming back from injury too? I mean, I know they're big names, but what about a guy like Brandon Marshall? What about a guy like AJ Green? Way too big of a name. But think about players in that same mold. You've got a player that maybe didn't make it past week 7 or 8, has a big injury, contract year, probably going to get released, and decides, hey, I'm going to come out and I'm going to show, I'm 100%. Maybe a guy like let me try to think here, Chris Thompson, running back for the Redskins, right? Little bit of a battle there, enamored in terms of Adrian Peterson. They've got a ton of depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does he really have to lose if he was 100% to go out there and showcase, hey, these are the skills I have. And then maybe, like you said, you get him in a position where he goes into camp, maybe a little bit more football ready in terms of going out on field. And he's also building a highlight package. So if things fall apart, then, he's not really hurting himself now in terms of where they are in the season, but he definitely has the ability to go out and show that dedication to staying healthy, trying to be 100%, and that he can still play football. I think a lot of these guys that we forget about, Eli Rogers, the receiver, for the Defenders to be one, we just forget about him because they get buried on the depth chart. They go out for a couple games and they never, ever come back. And we just can't even think about it,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that for guys who get injured and end the season on IR, I do think that, for the younger players, it's definitely a possibility that they should look at going into the XFL, maybe picking up 3 or 4 games in the, late in the season in the XFL to try and work themselves back into game shape, work themselves back into, into building that strength in the injured parts of their body. And, obviously they're going to be players that are more skilled than what is out there on the field. So, if they're recovered, if they're rehabbed, they should be able to avoid, for the most part, any of the downfalls that you'll see from players who are set at that level for the XFL. And I see people asking about, does this league ever have a chance of competing with the NFL? Maybe in 75 years. Let's be honest. If this league is going to be a league that competes, it's going to take decades because, the NFL, and, say what you will about leagues like the the USFL or something like that back
USFL,
in the 80s. Yeah. Those leagues, you took the best of both leagues and combined them to make the NFL, but
it would take a scandal. I think it would take a scandal. It would take something.
It would take people going away from the NFL, and I thought that best situation would have been with the concussion situation.
Yep.
When it first surfaced, that would have been something that could have played to the benefit of a league like the XFL, but there was no other league there was no other league in play at that time. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's clear that they don't want to be competition at this point. There's a reason that they're on after the Super Bowl. They want to piggyback off what the NFL is doing. They want to be friendly with the NFL, but they also want to show people that the NFL isn't necessarily doing everything the best way. Look at what we can do to try to innovate the game, make it a little more palatable for those of you that have complaints about it. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, let players be a little more like players. One question I had for you, Uche, with the play clock you were talking about. Doesn't the 40-second play clock, though, start at the end of the play, not when they start or not when they actually spot the ball in the NFL? So
yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, so it's really not that big of a difference because the 25-second play clock does not start until they officially spot the ball in the XFL. So you're talking a difference, but it's probably more like a difference of maybe like 7 seconds or something like that. Vice. And I'm telling you, I'm sure it still matters. I'm sure it still matters. But
no, you're right, man. I mean, that's a good point. And again, if you look at what they're doing in the XFL, they have an actual ball spotter, so that ball gets spotted fairly quickly, and that 25 seconds gets started fairly quickly. I think that in the NFL, they throw in balls from the sidelines. So generally, I think it's about the same. I think they get the ball lined up and get the ball set at about the same rate. But another thing that I'm having a little bit of an issue, really buying into it is the way that they do the 2-minute drill. They call it the comeback period. But at the end of the day, I think part of the greatness of that last 2 minutes, once you hit the 2-minute warning, is that it is a race against the clock. I think that is intentionally set up to be a higher difficulty level of section of the game for an offense that's behind to try and come back. You have to be on top of your game. You have to be near perfect, and you have to be able to manage getting the right plays and manage the clock itself and keeping the clock from beating you, which for that higher level of difficulty, in my opinion, That's what really defines part of the professionalism that is the NFL. Now with the XFL, I think stopping the clock after each play, I don't buy into it, just simply because it slows the game down in a period where the game should be sped up. It kind of works in reverse of what they're trying of what you see with the regular time settings before the 2-minute warning. But I really do think that the 2-minute drill is going to be tweaked over a little bit. I think they may even revert back to how the NFL does it, because that's where the excitement comes in. You are and even with a minute left in the game, if you've got one timeout, you essentially can turn that minute into 2.5 minutes of game clock time by working the sidelines, gaining yards, working the sidelines, and calling timeouts. When you stop the clock after every play, I mean, I saw a team run a running play to start the 2-minute to their 2-minute offense, and it was of no consequence because the clock stopped as soon as he got tackled, which to me it's kind of backwards. I felt like that part may have again been something that sounded good in the meeting, in the boardroom, but in execution, I think it actually hurts it actually takes away from the actual skill and discipline required to operate in those short 2-minute periods, both for the coaches and for the players. Because, as coaches, you got to have a script for your 2-minute even set up in the NFL, because you need to have those plays coming out quick because you got to keep moving. But in the XFL, not so much.
I would offer the ball spotter is a resolution to players that don't always let the opposing player get up.
Yeah,
we see that gamesmanship all the time. And as a fan of the team trying to move the ball on the field, it absolutely irritates you to no end that, the defender's holding your player down, or they're kicking the ball forward, or they're screwing with the ball at all. So the fact, like you said, I mean, they went out and said, okay, it may not be as efficient as we'd like, but we're going to have a dedicated guy that all he's going to do is spot this ball. He's not going to worry about picking up a flag. He's not going to worry about walking down the field or anything else. Like, they kind of need that extra position. As far as what you mentioned there with the 2-minute, I thought it added an element of running to the less than 2-minute game that we normally don't see. Generally, you don't run the ball because of the clock runoff. Yeah. So maybe, like you said, it should be implemented a little bit differently, where, I mean, it's, just kind of throwing mud at a wall here. Maybe they say, okay, we'll only stop the clock after 3 running plays. That way you're not totally just running and running and running. But, you've kind of got that excitement of they don't just have to throw it because they're trying to stay in bounds. I actually think when we look at teams that have really high-powered explosive running backs, they can't use them in the 2-minute warning. And we all know that.
Well, so they can use them. They just use them with swing routes. A swing route is essentially a run play. You're just dumping it to your back, straight out of the backfield, right around the line of scrimmage, and he's actually catching the ball while he's moving forward, which operates essentially like a run play.
That's true. And in Madden, all you need is swing and stretches to win. So I understand where some of the logic is. But at the same time, it would be good. Let's say I had a player like Le'Veon Bell, right? Where you have a running back that's going to be patient behind the line of scrimmage, kind of needs to run with a fullback. You can line them up in a situation like that and know, okay, he may only get 8 yards, but we know the clock is going to stop. In a situation where you're trying to pick up a field goal, you might want to rely on a fullback, where in the NFL, you might not even have a fullback at this point. You might want to rely on those short yardage runs just to get yourself in position to kick that field goal you need to score, as opposed to just picking up big chunks of yardage. And I think a lot of times you hinder teams with what they can do because they know, hey, we have to do with something that's going to stop the clock. And a lot of run plays always aren't viable because you're going to have a defensive back standing there with his back to the sidelines, just waiting. They don't care about giving up yardage. They just want to tackle him in bounds.
Yeah. And those are all good points. And one thing I think could be a solution is do what they do in college. Stop the clock after a first down.
Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty sure, I think someone in chat said the CFL does the same thing with this comeback rule. I haven't watched too much Canadian football, but I believe it. But I think in the perfect world, right, what the XFL wants is they want They want teams to be going back and forth in these last 2 minutes, provide them that opportunity to just not worry about run their offense and score as much as possible. Because we know there's nothing more entertaining than when you are in these last 2 minutes and you see lead changes and then the other team needs to respond. And I think that's what they're artificially trying to generate with it. But yeah, you're right. It did go on a little bit in some cases.
Yeah, the 2-minute drill or the 2 minute, the final 2 minutes of the half felt more like it was 5 minutes of the half, which at the end of the day, I think only, in each game that the team that had it at the 2-minute mark, they had it when the half ended. I mean, it wasn't like they actually changed possessions unless there's something that I missed. The teams still use the same kind of philosophy in trying to drain the clock, trying to get it, trying to use up as much of the clock as they could before they scored or, before there was a turnover or whatever it may be. But didn't necessarily, I don't think that rule change played out exactly how they hoped it would have played out, because the pace was still dictated by whoever had the ball, and they still tried to, just squeeze it for every second they could without giving the ball back to the other team. So nobody really got a chance to respond to a score in that same 2-minute period.
Yeah, we'll see. And I don't know. I think that some of the games, like Saturday's games were obviously really close and entertaining for the most part. Sunday's games left a little bit to be desired, but I felt like there were definitely moments in that 2-minute drill that I enjoyed the fact that they got so much time. But yeah, like you said, it definitely drug a little bit. But I don't know. I saw somebody asking, Sith Kryptonians in chat asking about the kickoff. That was one thing we talked about this yesterday, Uche, that I loved, and it makes so much sense from a player safety standpoint, from a entertainment standpoint, to make sure we actually get kickoff returns. That I'm hoping to see that implemented, to be quite honest. We need to see a little bit more of it, maybe a full season, but I think the NFL is definitely something they can take a look at.
Yeah, I think that was something that's a real game changer for what's really been a problem that the NFL's been trying to solve for a long time with the kickoff situation. They tried first taking out the wedge, then they moved the kickoff up to the 35-yard line instead of the 30. And really that move kind of nullified the kickoff as a play for, however many years that they've had it had that rule in effect now. I feel like it has actually nullified and made that an obsolete play for the most part. You still see those one-off opportunities where guys return the balls, and even more rarely now you see a kick get returned for a touchdown. A la the Devin Hester days when, any kick that didn't go out the back of the end zone was liable to get rammed back 100+ yards for a touchdown. But, I think that people still kind of desire to have that kind of excitement in the game. And while the rule was changed more in a bid to try and make the game safer for players, understandably, I think that the unintended consequence was that it kind of robbed the game of one of the most exciting aspects in the kickoff return. And I think this was a great job by the XFL of kind of remedying that by having, by moving up the kickoff coverage team to basically make it a sort of Oklahoma drill kind of setup for the returner and the kickoff return team itself, which I thought was good.
Well, unfortunately, gentlemen, I have to call it a night with you guys, but I'm going to leave you with one final talking point. We've talked a lot about ways we feel like the XFL has adapted a little bit to the rules and the football we're used to seeing. I will ask you, knowing how prideful the NFL is, knowing how we just saw this giant 100-year celebration, knowing how they're the powerhouse in pretty much all sports, aside from FIFA, at least in our country, U.S., biggest sport I think we have, do you really feel like they would look at a lower level league and adapt anything they took? Because at that point, they would actually have to admit to fans, hey, Vince McMahon's league did it better in one game than we've done in 100 years. And because of that, here's these fancy new kickoffs. Here's these fancy new 10-minute halftimes. And I don't think I saw one mascot over the course of the weekend. So I think if anything, they really need to do kind of step up. They have the goofy fans,
Yeah,
but I
need
didn't
mascots.
I didn't see any mascot. I need I don't know, Don the Defender out there running around, right?
Yeah,
You
they do
guys
need
have a good one.
mascots.
And I will talk to you both later on.
All right,
All right,
appreciate it,
nice
Ryan.
meeting-
Have a good one, brother.
Nice
Nice
you,
meeting
Ryan.
you. Have a good one.
See you later, Uche.
Yes, sir. Now, in response to that, I would say that the NFL already has looked at the XFL, the previous iteration of the XFL, and him actually taking aspects of that game that was, overhyped and underdelivered. They took aspects of the presentation and immediately brought it over into the NFL. The Sky Cam. The Sky Cam originates with the original XFL. The cameras on the field, the cameraman on the field next to the huddles, that originated with the old XFL. So the NFL has actually not been too prideful to the point where they didn't see a good idea and decide to steal it. They've done it before, and I think they'll do it again. It may take a few seasons just to kind of allow the NFL to kind of give it their own kind of vetting and their own going through their own due diligence with it. But I do believe that the NFL will, in time, at least take. I could see the NFL taking the kickoff remedy and applying that to the NFL, and I could also see them taking the extra point. Maybe not getting rid of the extra point since they moved it back to the 15, but maybe adding on another factor in terms of getting more than 2 points after you score a touchdown. They may give an opportunity to get that third point to add on a third point conversion after a touchdown as well. I think that would actually be very well-rounded, make the NFL, the game overall, very well-rounded, and would give it, and it wouldn't look like they were having to steal ideas. It's just something that was a natural evolution that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot will depend on pressure from the players too. With the kickoff, it makes so much sense to player safety stuff. And it really should, the NFL has to just be slapping themselves in the head. The fact that instead of doing something that was actually good for player safety and more exciting for the game, we just moved it forward and gave us more touchbacks. How stupid.
You got to think about who these guys are. These are 60, 70-year-old owners who don't have the kind of creativity to look at a situation and say, hey, how do we keep this exciting but make it safer? I mean, it took all of 2 years for the XFL to come up with rules that actually held that excitement in place, held the viability of the play in place while making it less dangerous for the players. And that's obviously because you have, more creative, younger minds looking at the sport and trying to figure out how to make it better for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that with what the past 5 years in the NFL, it has turned a lot of people off because of all the rule changes specifically designed for player safety. It's drove people crazy, whether it's hits across the middle, whether it's you can't touch the quarterback ever, whatever it is, it's all done for player safety. This is a move that will clearly help them in that way. So I don't think, although the NFL is prideful as hell, I think that is something at least that they will definitely be considering. As far as the extra point, I think it is, like you said, I definitely could see them going to the 10-yard line and adding that 3 point, but that is going to take a lot because that changes a lot of things. Just think about
changes the mathematics of the game.
It changes the history of the game.
Yeah.
When you look at legacy and how you compare, teams' points per game averages, it changes so much historically. And for what it took just to move the field goal back a couple yards, or the extra point, sorry, just for what that took and the press that was and the reaction everybody had to it initially. Now it's kind of normalized, but yeah, I can see that taking a little bit longer to happen. And I can't see them ever letting the officials be heard. I can't see that ever happening.
That is something that I think I agree with you. I think that would be a bit of a stretch for the NFL to look at the way the officials are set up in the league and look at how the XFL is doing it. I think I think the NFL would pass on having that kind of transparency. And, we all wonder, well, why would you be, opposed to being more transparent with the referees? I think, again, it just boils down to the NFL exposing themselves to the public as being, overtly flawed in how they look and how they judge, or at least inconsistent in how they judge some of the things that happen on the field. I mean, obviously, you can look back at a number of games where situations happened and plays weren't or fouls weren't called, flags weren't thrown. I don't think we have to necessarily mention some of the most egregious ones. I know that there are Saints fans out there that are holding on to their necks right now as we sit here and talk about that. But triggered about to trigger the Saints fans in the building. But at the end of the day, that is something that hurts the brand. If the NFL allows, if you can see in real time that referees are not really understanding what they're calling and aren't able to consistently make the same kind of judgment calls when you can hear conversation between them, that's damaging to the brand of the NFL. I mean, and it's a big enough problem as it is, as it doesn't appear that the refs are getting much better in the league. But part of that is the league's fault. The league has created these points of emphasis. Each and every year, there's a points of emphasis video that they show inside of every NFL locker room during training camp that the referees present to the players to show what they will be focusing on during the NFL preseason, during the NFL regular season, and calling them with more and more strictness attached to it. And that's actually been a bad thing for the league, because it used to be, and this isn't that long ago, when I played 2013, 2014, from 2007 to 2014, when I played, it used to be that if you had your hands on the inside frame of a defensive player and he started to lose his balance and you torqued him and pancaked him into the ground, that was a legitimate block. And that, to me, is still a legitimate block. But now you see that sometimes they call those as holding calls. Sometimes they don't. But you hear even the commentators saying, yeah, you can't torque their body now. No, that's if your hands are inside of his frame and you torque him because he's losing his balance and you're trying to finish him off, that's a great block. You get a plus for that in the film room. Yeah. But now in the league, that's a flag.
To be clear, you're not talking about grabbing their pads. You're just talking about having control and moving their body, right?
Yeah, having control. Yeah. Like so the breastplate of the pad of your pads comes. Its edges are right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you grab those edges and you're walking a guy backwards and he's starting to lose balance and you torque him backwards to kind of finish him. I mean, it's violent, yes, because you feel him losing his balance. So of course you're trying to break him in half. But when you do that, now they're calling those holding calls. That's not holding. That's a pancake. If he's trying to escape your block and he's actively moving away and you're holding on to that same area and you can see, and the ref can see him reaching to move away from you, but you're not letting go. Yeah, that's a hold. That's generally been the way that they've called it for the longest. But the last like 1 or 2 seasons, I've seen them calling legitimate pancake blocks as holding, which, it sucks. But that's where that gray area has been coming into the NFL and has kind of made it hard for players to really know where they stand when they're blocking guys, or where they stand when they're playing defense on a deep ball. We all remember the play in Jacksonville when Jacksonville played against the Patriots in that playoff game. They call that deep pass interference call that looked like great defense. And, that was a crucial call that changed the momentum of the game. And then obviously, the situation with the New Orleans Saints and the St. Louis and the LA Rams, when there was, an egregious pass interference committed by the Rams that was not called. I mean, these are all things that the NFL can play off in real time and then come back and say they were wrong. But if you're able to actually hear these guys communicating and hear that they're getting it wrong right there in real time, even talking about it, that is something that I think the NFL wants to stay away from. And just to kind of round this up, I think there's one last part of the game that I wasn't necessarily – I guess I was neutral towards it, but I can see why the NFL would never consider allowing something like this. And that is being able to hear the communication between the coach and the quarterback and the plays called. I mean, can you give New England any more temptation into trying to cheat to win another title than to allow them to hear plays that are called on the sideline in a regular TV broadcast. I just don't think that that's something that's possible.
Well, here's what I'll say is that it depends on the delay, the television delay. Most television delays are something like 20 seconds or something, right? So I just don't think that that's reasonable to, especially with a 25-second play clock. I don't think you're going to be looking at that being a worry, to be honest, for somebody to have to watch it and then relay it in time. But so I don't know, though. Definitely, I mean, who knows?
Well, at the end of the day, and I look at it from a scouting standpoint. You see what like we look at what the Patriots did during that Bengals game. They're allowed to film. They go a little bit too far. They're filming parts of the field they're not supposed to film. They're cheating again. The Patriots are cheating again, and that's these are things that they have rules set up for it within the league. But when you have a situation now where a team can go back and look at the actual broadcast footage and just begin to go through a number of games of one team and be able to basically get a listing of most of the plays that this team runs. Now, this is a copycat league. A lot of the formations, a lot of the motions.
Yeah, but you know that, though. I was listening to your thing. You were able to call out by what they were saying. You knew the play.
Yeah, you do know the play.
Yeah, because all the formations, the verbiage remains the same throughout a lot of these things. So what would be the real difference, I guess, in like seeing them running and then hearing the verbiage that they use that's really similar to your verbiage?
Well, I think that's legitimate. That's a legitimate point to make. But at the same time, I also think that it's only confirmation that you do know exactly what play they're running. And that is an advantage to another team or every team, regardless of whether it's part of the play or all of the play. Once you hear it and there's confirmation matched up by what you see on the film, but what you see in the formations, then it's easy. It almost becomes, an open book test when you're out there on the field because you can see what they're lined up in and you already know. So you can beat that play to its to the mesh point and try and stop it on the defensive end, where it's obviously going to benefit a defense more so than it would an offense. But at the end of the day, I really feel like that's a step too far for the NFL. They don't want to give that kind of information or make that kind of information available for the other side when teams are trying to scout each other's setups. But I think we're going to bring this stream to an end here. Really appreciate everybody who's been in on the stream. I see. Let's look at one or two chats to kind of wrap things up. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're hitting that like button, letting us know what you think about the stream so we can get that thing pushed up in that YouTube algorithm. But I see here Eddie D says, did you guys talk about how Kaepernick was asked if he wanted to join the XFL and he wanted $20 million, which is more money than the entire NFL team's rosters combined? I'm not sure. I didn't read. I saw that they couldn't meet his salary demands. I'm not sure exactly what was it. $20 million? Can you confirm that, Ryan? Was it $20 million that he was asking for?
I heard rumors about that. I never saw like actual source or anything, or like saw Kaepernick say that, but it wouldn't surprise me. That dude doesn't want to play. Kaepernick does not actually want to play football. I think a lot of people may have been in denial about that for a while until the stunt he pulled with the
NFL and
at the Atlanta thing when he was supposed to have the tryout, makes a big fucking show of it, goes to this random high school with all these camera crews watch. It was such garbage. And I think that the last bastion of like Kaepernick defenders, other than like the ones that just are going to like see what they want to see no matter what.
Yeah.
Other than those people, I think everybody else realized what this is, and it's all publicity for him at this point, which isn't a bad idea. He can do more for himself and his brand right now and make more money by being some kind of symbol than he can as a football player. Yeah.
And the thing is, they say patience is a virtue. I believe that if he would have humbled himself and taken a gig with the XFL, he could have become the face of the league at a certain point. And being the face of the league offers you a ton of perks in way of salary, in way of exposure. And, he could have definitely had a story to tell moving from one league to another and could have been instrumental in helping to kind of build the XFL into a solid and well-respected league in the respect that it had, a starting NFL quarterback, a Super Bowl appearing NFL quarterback as one of the top players in the league. And, I think that would be an opportunity missed. For me, I look at everything like that as an opportunity. Of course, they can't pay you NFL money, dude. They can't pay that. They can't. But again, his brand is what's most important to him right now. And I mean, hey, whatever, dude. I'm not too worried about it. There are guys out there that are going to be playing on Saturday and Sunday, regardless of what you're doing. So with that being said, really appreciate everybody being on the stream. We are going to be back on with the Lineman Life podcast. Make sure you check your notifications and check for when we do put up reminders for our upcoming live streams. But really appreciate Ryan Kennel from Arcade Outpost being here. Sports Wars. Check out our Sports Wars channel. We both put up content on Sports Wars each and every week. We will catch you guys on the next live